Good morning. This is March 16, Tuesday, 2021. The Insurance Committee of the Tennessee House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly is now in session. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Representatives Carr, Sapicki, Freeman, Hawk, Hicks, Hodges, Johnson, Lafferty, Mitchell, Powers, Rudd, Smith, Terry, Thompson, White, Vice Chairman Rudder, Chairman Kumar.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Members, do we have any personal orders? Seeing none, we'll move on to our agenda for the day. We have House Bill 0767 carried by Chairman Hawk. Do I have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we will have an amendment on there as well. Drafting code is 4164.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. Without objection, we will vote on the amendment, and then Chairman Hawk can explain the amended bill to us. All those in favor of amendment 4164, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes prevail. The amendment goes on the bill. Mr. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Kumar. This is the Insurance Modernization Act for the Department of Commerce and Insurance this year. The proposed legislation enacts a National Association of Insurance Commissioners Model Act that is necessary for the department to avoid federal preemption and maintain its accredited status to the benefit of the department and our domestic insurance industry. Additionally, the department seeks to update Tennessee's captive insurance laws to allow additional coverages and by removing regulations and practices that are unnecessary for the protection of the public. And that's essentially what the amendment does as well. It lowers the amount of capital for an individual getting into the captive insurance business, for lack of a better word, down from $250,000 to $100,000. Additionally, the proposed legislation makes additional statutory revisions designed to make regulatory processes more efficient, especially in regards to workers' compensation. With that, happy to answer any questions that may come up or get the smart people to come answer them if I can't, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you, Chairman Hawk. Kindly explain a little bit more about lowering of the limits from 250 to 100,000. Does that apply to captive insurance?
Yes, it does. That is the application to captive insurance. Let me make sure that I've got my. It is just to let some of the smaller entities to come into the captive insurance field is what the intention is, Mr. Chairman.
Are we comfortable that they will be solvent and dependable?
Chairman, I am happy to go out of session to bring anyone from Department of Commerce and Insurance up to address the issue if need be.
That might be helpful. We do have. He has punted. We will go out of session. Thank you for being here. Kindly introduce yourself for the record. And I think you heard our concern or question.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Patrick Merkel. I'm the Director of Insurance for the Department of Commerce and Insurance. And while this will lower the minimum capital, each captive goes through a review to make sure that it's the statutory minimum, to make sure that the minimum that they have, sometimes it's going to be higher than the statutory minimum, and it's determined based on the complexity of their plan. And so if it's a very complex plan with a lot of premium written, the capital requirement is going to be significantly higher. This just is lowering it so that smaller captives in the protective cell structure can have a lower entry barrier. And we are comfortable that this will protect the consumers and the state of Tennessee.
Well, thank you. considering that we have a fairly vibrant insurance industry, how many of these companies are that small that they require the lowering of the capital?
So we have in the captive area itself over 700 captive entities. Approximately 200 of them are full pure captives, and that minimum capital is not changing. We have about 500 or so cells in the protected cell structure. And they are much smaller companies. They're going to be sort of more your smaller to middle range businesses as opposed to the big Fortune 1000 companies that are in the pure.
And do they sell all kinds of insurance? Is it from life, home, auto? I don't think they do health insurance, do they?
No, they can do stop loss on health. They cannot do auto. Third party. A captive program is really designed for a company to do their own risk. And so it's going to be their property insurance. It could be terror insurance. It could be cyber insurance, insuring their own risk and not going out to third parties. So it wouldn't be a captive that is formed in order to sell insurance to the public on car insurance or home insurance.
Thank you. Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wanting to know about the neighboring states. Does this make us more competitive with neighboring states, or what is their regulations?
Haven't done a complete survey of the neighboring states. It keeps us in line with Vermont, which is sort of the leader in the United States on captives. They just last year lowered their minimum capital for cells to $100,000. North Carolina is making a big push. Alabama is started. So this definitely will keep us competitive with our neighboring states and the rest of the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, any other questions? Thank you. Sorry. Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Sorry for potentially the redundant question, but just one last time, the $100,000 is only if somebody qualified for not needing to have more set aside, correct?
Correct.
If it was a larger, so if it's a small entity that only would be required, this allows for a statutory lower limit to be held in reserve.
Correct. And it's for the cell structure, it's the 100,000 is at the core. And then you kind of think about the subsets coming off. The 100,000 would have to be sort of at that top layer as the minimum. And then each of the cells are going to have their own structure, capital requirements based on their structure of their program.
So we're not changing the formula in which we create that the capital requirements. We're just lowering the minimum. So if a small, okay,
Correct.
got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Just as a follow-up, I could ask you, I'm sure Chairman Hawk could tell us also, what are the other key facts that apply in this legislation that stand out?
Sir, Chairman Hawk pointed out the credit for reinsurance piece. That's the National Association of Insurance Commissioner Model Act legislation that will keep us from being federally preempted and really level the playing field to make it easier for our domestic, especially life insurance companies, to obtain credit for their reinsurance, so their insurance on their insurance products. We talked about the captives. There's a workers' comp. Chairman Hawk mentioned that as well. There's a filing that is required of workers' compensation carriers called their loss cost multiplier. And currently the statute says that that multiplier needs to be filed every year, that regardless of whether it changes. And more often than not in our statutes, the insurance carriers are only required to file rates if they change their rates. And so this creates some confusion and really unneeded filing. We generally have about 10 carriers a year that forget to make this filing because it's just such an odd piece. And so it makes it easier on the carriers on that. Another piece that's in it is the healthcare liability report. Back in the early 2000s, prior to the medical malpractice reforms and the tort reforms, law was passed that required carriers and attorneys and hospitals to file information on medical malpractice settlements. And that data was used to gather some data that was used to sort of formulate the medical malpractice reforms and the tort reforms a couple of years after that. That data is still being filed with us after, and the medical malpractice industry and insurance industry has sort of leveled out and become more affordable. Probably the more important piece on this is that data is available from the federal government through a federal website. So it's publicly available. So it's just a redundancy of filing that we're having to collect. And then the final piece is deals with the service of process. Right now, part of every licensure requirement with the Division of Insurance and the Department of Commerce and Insurance is a requirement that they name the commissioner as an agent for service of process. And we have about 200 or so of those that come in every week. And more often than not, those are going to be lawsuits where the insurance company is named as the uninsured motorist carrier. And it's just giving the insurance company notice that that is happening. We're not as efficient in handling that as the Secretary of State is. And so we're just trying to remove ourselves from that process. The Secretary of State handles thousands of these every week. And that's the majority of the pages in the bill is that process.
Well, thank you for that explanation. You're right. The medical malpractice scene has settled down after the crisis over the past few decades. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go back into the session. Chairman Hawk, you recognize. Is there anything else we need to know?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for pointing out how better prepared I need to be when I get to the floor. And obviously, with the Deputy Speaker's urging, I think he should join me in the floor when we present this bill whenever it comes up. If we're fortunate enough to have the positive votes on this legislation, I welcome the Deputy Speaker to stand with me arm to arm as we express what the Deputy Commissioner with Insurance just expressed. So with that, I welcome an opportunity to hear a vote on this legislation, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you. The question's been called without objection. We are voting on House Bill 0767. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes prevail. The
Thank
bill
you.
moves on to Finance Committee. Members, any other business to come before the committee? I think we learned that the Deputy Speaker is available for prep members on any needs they have before a bill comes up. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We stand adjourned.